Okay, hey everyone, with you Elena Litvinova, and in this video we will continue to study our TypeScript config and next properties. And in this video we will study modulus properties. It is part 2. Actually, I wanted to record modulus and emit in this video, but at the end I understood that in emit need to put more attention and decided to start from modulus. Okay, in this video we will study what is baseUrl, moduleResolution, module suffixes, paths, root directory, rootDirs, typeRoots, and things around that, and also revise a little information about different modulus which we have. It can be CommonJS, require.js, ECMAScript modulus. Everything we will cover here. But before we will not start our video, of course, not forget to subscribe on this channel, press bell icon, and go to watch new video. Okay, hey everyone, let's start to study modulus properties, which is allowUmdGlobalAccess, baseUrl, moduleResolution, suffixes, noResolve, paths, resolveJsonModule, rootDir, rootDirs, typeRoots, and types. We go through all these modulus. Actually, before I wanted to create for module and emit together. But here there are many properties which I not super understand, and even the documentation not help me with it, because it's need I usually better to understand when there are examples. So let's try to discover these modules. First of all, we start with allowUmdGlobalAccess, and let's read about what it means. When set to true, allowUmdGlobalAccess lets you access UMD export as global from inside module files. A module file is a file that has imports and or exports. Without this flag, using an export from UMD module requires an import declaration. How I understood, if you want to use jQuery or Lodash or really library which you use everywhere, you can use this allowUmdGlobalAccess and put it into true. But actually, I don't know how proper way it's better to put into your program. I'm looking for some examples, and you can use, I think, global.d.ts file and put here global constant, for example 3JS. But it's need to play with it, how it better works. But if you need a global access, you should to use allowUmdGlobalAccess property. Next thing, baseUrl lets you set a base directory to resolve non-absolute module names. For example, you have a directory baseUrl. You have different files and folders here, and if your baseUrl is baseUrl by default baseUrl./ or which is connected with the same folder where typeScript.config.json exists. So in that case, you just need import hello world from hello world, and you just can write hello.world, which is folder/world. If, for example, inside you have, I don't know, you can put any baseUrl directory. For example, I have a folder where I slightly play with different things. For example, I have this folder and can set as baseUrl core. It means that inside I can import everything like test without writing core folder. Yes, if you need something like that, you should use this property. Module. What means module? Set the model system for program. See the module's reference page for more information. Let's go. So, starting with ECMAScript 2015, JavaScript has a concept of modules. TypeScript shares this concept. Modules are executed within their own scope, known as global scope. Usually, how you remember before, if you work with JavaScript before 2015, I worked, and maybe you remember we imported JavaScript and script files at the beginning of the document, and after it you can override any function or variable and etc. Everything became global. Of course, if you have a function, in function you have own scope, which is about function, and it was some approaches which you can use before, for example function which called by your own and etc. Usually this thing if you needed to create any library like jQuery. And from ECMAScript 2015 the conception around modules started, and it means that each file, for example modules, global, this means that variables, function, classes and etc. declared in a module are not visible outside the module unless they are explicitly exported using one of the export form, and to consume a variable, function, class, interface exported from a different module. It has to be imported using one of the import form. Also interesting thing, which model is quite well known module loader used in JavaScript are Node.js loader for common JS modules and the required JS loader for AMD modules in web applications. In TypeScript, so just as in ECMAScript 2015, any file contains top-level import or export is considered a module. So with ECMAScript 2015 usually used this format, import and export. Export, when you write your own function or interface or class, you export this module, and after it in another file you can import this module and use it through your program. So and this is really a cool thing about scope and isolation, and what this property do, which is module. It helps you to describe which module system you want to use in compile. For example, we can set common JS modules here, common JS, and if I, for example, delete this, I put here dist. So, and I just do tsconfig, and inside of dist I have this defined property. It is ECMA common JS modules, and everything transpile in this. I can use ECMAScript modules or UMD, and it will look like that. AMD modules system, actually I first time see them, that's okay, or ES next. For example here, and what next is come, I for example compile, and what I have here another system of modules which is ES next. Well, and there are a lot of different modules. I usually not recommend use ES next modules, just because if something changed in new standard of JavaScript, it can affect your code, and better to use something really proper like ES 2020, ES 2015 and etc. Well, and if you're wondering about the difference between these ECMAScript types, add support for dynamic imports and import meta. What is import meta? Import meta, this is meta tags which your page can have, and how I understood, in your new versions standards you can import them like an object. That's really cool. So, and other properties which you can use. Module resolution specifies a module resolution strategy. Usually use Node for Node.js common JS implementation. Yeah, but I'm not super understand how it help. I tried to play it with different things around module resolution. Okay, mostly I suggest not relative. Module resolution is the process the compiler uses to figure out what an import refers to. Consider an import statement like import A from module A. In order to check any use of A, the compiler needs to know exactly what it represents and will need to check its definition module A. Okay, so usually we use again I return back. Usually we use node, yes, for Node.js, a common JS implementation. Okay, go next. Modal suffixes. Now, if you describe this property, for example, you can add different suffixes which your file has, and after it you can just import like that. For example, foo.eos.ts, you don't need to write about this, you just import foo, and these suffixes will be recognized. These two quotas, it just means .typescript file. Next thing, noResolve. By default, TypeScript will examine the initial set of files for import and directives and add these resolved files to your program. If no resolve is set, this process doesn't happen. Well, actually this property, I also didn't use it before, but how I understood it help if you have really something strange strategies for finding your modulus. For example, I read this problem on Stack Overflow, and it was difference between resolution and finding, and this guy had a problem, and when he said no resolve, everything worked fine. So if you will have this problem with resolution, you can just put no resolve as true, but it needs to play really. Okay, pass. This part for me, it's like aliases in Webpack, I think, which help us to have shortcuts for some libraries or, for example, some parts of your application. For example, we have jQuery, and we have this path for jQuery. We can just say everything of this is jQuery, and just after it import just jQuery without this large way. Or for example, you have app directory, config, environment, shared helpers, test, a lot of different directories. You can set way for each directory, and after it you can just use in your program import my file from app / and etc. It will looks like import my function from app, for example, or app home, everything what is in app folder. And you can put this import everywhere in your program. I mean, it could be a lot of folders which is go inside, and instead to do things like that, and finally here you are in home directory, you can just write something like that. It's really amazing thing which you can use, and it help to have these shortcuts and not write really large ways to your code. Next property, resolveJsonModule, which is about, for example, if you set this resolveJsonModule in true, you can import JSONs. Without this property, you can't import JSONs. For example, this is this directory. I removed this, sorry. For example, somewhere there is JSON, which is JSON, and I just import settings from this JSON, and also I have a resolution here. If, for example, I put this property in the false, what I have, I have a problem import settings from JSON. There is a problem here. Okay, go next. Root directory, mostly the longest common path of all non-declaration input files. How I understood this root directory, it means that a folder which is has more files in your project, if it's possible to describe this way. But for example, I have here product web alert. This is my website. I have several clients here, and for example, server And the most important folder is the source. Other things around config, migration, public, it's just small folders additional, but the source is the main important folder. And this is root directory. And usually you should set this root directory, but it's not about things that only root directory will be compiled. No, it's not about that. Everything which is actually how I understood, everything what is close, I mean everything what you import will compile in your code, but mostly everything which is close to tsconfig.json will compile, but you can exclude it only with additional include, exclude files things, but everything have to be compiled. And also outputDir, when you compile your code, you compile it in module which you choose, ECMAScript or CommonJS modules and etc. You should to set naming of this directory. I think by default this is dist. I'm not sure exactly. For example, I remove it. Will it here put true? I remove this and tscon, and what I have. If I have now this, okay. Everything will compile close to this file. This is awful way, to be honest, because your file started to be double. And because of that, it's really cool to set outputDir. For example, dist or resolve. Now, usually this is dist, but I put another name in just to show you that you have this name in here. And everything inside will be outside core or tsconfig YouTube. Why outside code was compiled? It outside tsconfig, but somewhere here I import this function, and because it was compiled. What next? rootDirs. If you have multiple rootDirs, and how I understood they can communicate better between them, you can set up several rootDirs. Yeah. Well, and what next? TypeRoots. You declare by default all visible types. Packages are included in your compilation. For example, not moduleless types, not moduleless types, a lot of types inside of it. You have that. And what we have next? And if you don't want that all types will be included in your program, you should just set typeRoots which you really want. And here also about packages. You need types for Node, Jest, Express. If you don't want that all types will be compiled. Okay, and next things is about emit. I think we finish on this. So we have studied our modules. And next video I also will watch how many views this video have, and after it I also decide this theme is really costed. If you're really interested in videos around TypeScript config and you want that it continue, just put a comment, like button, subscribe of course, and see you in next videos with viewer Elena Litvinova. Bye bye.